I mistakenly kissed my boyfriend's twin brother. With our identities uncovered, he decided to go along with it. Unable to escape the fierce and passionate kiss, I accidentally bit his lip. He licked away the blood from his lip, smiling with an ambiguous expression. My brother and I share a special bond, sister-in-law. Biting so hard, my brother will know it. In the morning, I woke up thirsty and went to the living room to get some water. The cool water running down my throat eased the slight discomfort in my throat and diluted the drowsiness. Daniel was away on a business trip, leaving me alone, feeling a bit out of place. If he were home, there would always be a glass of warm water on the bedside table. When I woke up, I heard a familiar sound, and the apartment door opened. I looked up and saw Daniel. The person I was longing for just a second ago suddenly appeared in front of me. Daniel. Without thinking, I left my slippers behind, put down the glass of water, and hurried to embrace him. Plunging into his arms, I rubbed my head against his chest for a while, taking a deep breath in his embrace. It smelled like a faint floral fragrance, not the familiar scent of soap. Without thinking too much, maybe his clothes had just been washed in the hotel. Wasn't he supposed to be away on a business trip for half a month? Why did he return so soon? I stretched out my arms and hugged his slim waist. He stiffened for a moment, then opened his arms and embraced me. Leaning against his left chest, feeling his strong, increasingly rapid heartbeat. The warmth of his skin transmitted through his clothes, conveying intense emotions. As we locked eyes, his thick eyelashes fluttered lightly, tempting me like a brush, scratching an itch in my heart. His arms around my waist gradually tightened. I could feel his strong desire, but I was surprised by his restraint. I leaned closer to him, first pretending to look pitifully into his deep eyes. Then lowered my gaze to depict his tightly sealed lips. "Don't you want me, Daniel?" As he was about to respond, I pressed my lips against his cheek. That kiss unleashed his restrained desires, and he instantly took the lead. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Today, Daniel's kisses were fierce and different from his usual gentle and patient teasing. We intertwined in a breathless and ambiguous embrace, my hands sliding into his hoodie, gently stroking his waist. On the lower right side, I felt a long scar protruding. Daniel didn't have a scar there. Something wasn't right. My mind went blank instantly as I pushed the person in front of me away. His gaze still stuck to me like a thread, entangling me layer by layer. I took a step back, my voice trembling. You're not Daniel." His eyes briefly cleared for a moment, then returned to a more dangerous and entrancing state. "But if I'm not Daniel, then who am I?" Staring at the face that looked exactly like Daniel's, my scalp tingled. Daniel never mentioned to me that he had a twin brother. But this situation, other than a twin brother, couldn't explain it. I cautiously raised my eyes to look into the man's eyes. They were like a predator staring at its prey, mischievous, lascivious, and determined. I tried to move my feet to get away from this unknown man, but he grabbed me and held me in his embrace. The fierce and passionate kiss struck again. My hands were controlled above my head as I bit the man's lip forcefully. The metallic taste of blood melted between our lips and tongues. The man rose slightly, rubbing my lips with his fingers. He licked away the blood from his lip, smiling with an ambiguous expression. "My brother and I share a special bond, sister-in-law." Biting so hard, are you afraid my brother won't know? My confused and tangled mind suddenly went blank. I looked at the man in a daze. The twin brother was a speculation I expected. This shared feeling. The man gently tucked my messy hair behind my ears, his voice tinged with a hint of dissatisfaction. "Didn't he tell you? He has a twin brother named David. The two of us share a physical bond." My heart was suddenly clenched, and I furrowed my brow. "How much can you sense? Do the sensations from different parts communicate with each other? Besides pain, can pleasure also be transmitted to each other?" David seemed to see through my thoughts, shrugged his shoulders, and blinked innocently. Guessed. A sudden cold, then a heat. Even though I was fully clothed at the moment, there was a sense of shyness, as if I were completely naked. I really wanted to call Daniel to question why he was hiding David and the shared sensations. Caught in a dilemma, David's phone rang. He took out his phone, glanced at it, and smiled ambiguously. "It's my brother calling. Should I answer?" In the quiet, only the buzzing of the vibrating phone could be heard. My thoughts were like sinking into mud, struggling between answering and not answering, sinking into an endless abyss. So I answered. A familiar voice sounded on the other end. "David? Where have you been?" Not picking up the phone for so long, I nervously held my breath, while David remained composed, as sincere as a noble gentleman. He casually picked up a strand of my hair, wrapped it around his fingertip, and played with it, teasing the cat. "Huh? Your mouth must have just been scratched by the cat, right?" Daniel's guess just made me exhale in relief, but David's response once again made my heart race. "No, it wasn't." I gripped David's hand tightly, furrowed my brow, and wordlessly shook my head at him. His slender fingers tapped at the corner of my lips, took the phone further away, and whispered softly in my ear, "Give me a kiss, and I won't tell my brother that you mistook him for someone else." If looks could kill, David would have been reduced to ashes by now. A despicable man, taking advantage of my confusion to engage in blackmail. How did my mouth suddenly hurt just now? It was both painful and pleasurable. Could it be? Stop guessing. Before Daniel could finish speaking, I tiptoed and planted a kiss on the side of David's face. David turned his head, and our lips briefly touched before pulling away. He smiled contentedly. Got bitten by the cat. Were you fighting with the cat for food? The cat was so eager it bit your mouth? No, it was a dog. Daniel, unaware of being called a dog, ended the call with a heartfelt warning. Why is there another dog in the picture? You're getting more and more perverse. Be careful in the future. Don't always make me suffer with you. The call ended, but my nerves remained tensed. The two brothers were so close to each other. Why did Daniel hide all of this from me? Doubts shrouded my mind in a thick fog, unable to be dispelled. As my thoughts sank, David grabbed the back of my neck and gave me a passionate, moist kiss. A storm of emotions once again raging. I sat weakly on the shoe bench in the entryway, greedily breathing in the air. Through the disheveled strands of hair, I saw David pacing around the apartment as if patrolling his territory. Why are you still here? This is my brother's house, and mine too. Shameless. My cat followed him excitedly, meowing and seemingly introducing himself to him. While Kitty was usually aloof, he seemed particularly fond of David. He picked up Kitty, playing with his chin. Kitty purred in David's arms, settling comfortably in a position. He looked down at Kitty for a while and asked calmly, "How did you meet my brother?" like a mistress who couldn't wait to inquire about the original wife. What does it have to do with you? Listen to your beautiful love story with him, then. David's eyes darkened, with a hint of imperceptible anger in his tone, indicating for everyone to stay in their place. This absurd drama couldn't continue. I spoke seriously, trying to wake him up. There's no room for a third party in love, David. Don't tread further on the wrong path. Fine, sister-in-law. If you say I'm the third party, then I am. David sighed helplessly, spouting a series of twisted reasoning. If someone else is the third party, I'll berate them for being so willingly debased. If a relative or friend is the third party, I'll advise them not to get caught. But if I am the third party, then this relationship is definitely heaven-sent providence. Caught in David's unusual thought processes, I was momentarily speechless. Just like Daniel, with the same genetic makeup, not sure where things went wrong. In a quiet room, only Kitty's meowing could be heard, seemingly cheering for David. That little ungrateful cat. Back when Daniel rescued it from under the car, he used to clean up its litter every day, but it never showed this clingy side. Kitty was the matchmaker between me and Daniel. I still remember it was a bitterly cold winter day. When the sunlight was scarce, some stray cats and dogs would seek warmth under cars. Kitty happened to get stuck under Daniel's car, helplessly meowing. No matter how we called and lured, it refused to come out. Despite being extremely worried, poverty prevented me from taking immediate action. I called the car owner, and that's how Daniel barged into my life. He was dressed lightly, yet his tall figure was striking. His eyes and brows had a strong sense of attack, impressing at first sight. "Hello, I just mentioned over the phone that there's a cat under your car." The frozen snow turned into dirty, scattered ice remnants on the ground. Ignoring it all, Daniel lay down without a word and slid under the car swiftly due to his light clothing. He soon pulled the little cat out from under the car. It was a calico. A cross-species hero saving the beauty. The cat found warmth and nestled in Daniel's arms, looking pitiful. Daniel exhaled a breath of white mist, his voice trembling. The cat is not injured. His ears and nose were red from the cold. And his clothes were dirty, making him look pitiful too. Is this cat yours? Stray cats in winter already had a hard time surviving. Next year, after their mating season, they might have to raise another batch of stray kittens. I looked at the calico with pity, then smiled at Daniel. If you don't intend to adopt it, then it's my cat now. Our eyes met, Daniel smiled and nodded slightly, handing the cat to me. He was about to speak when he frowned, turned his back, and started sneezing repeatedly. Seeing him covering his nose and motionless, I suppressed a smile and kindly offered him some tissues. "Thank you." His voice completely off-key. When Daniel turned back, his eyes were moist, like the mist in a valley, his hands slightly trembling in the cold air, with cold pink on his knuckles. Seeing him pitifully, it made one forget the earth-shattering sneezes just now. "It's cold, you should go back now." I smiled encouragingly, urging him, "I'll tell you about the cat's condition later." Another huge sneeze interrupted his goodbye. Red cheeks, perhaps from the cold, perhaps from embarrassment. He walked home, looking back 3 times, until he entered the neighboring unit. The cat also bid farewell with a reluctant meow. It was still very cold outside, but a warm tide surged in my heart. I stroked the cat's head, speaking softly, "We will meet him again." "And then?" David asked with a smile but clenched fists, asking through gritted teeth. "And then?" I took Kitty for a checkup, and through the phone number, I added Daniel on WeChat. I told him Kitty was very healthy and to take care of himself. I also sent him a video of Kitty. In the video, a model from my cabinet flashed by. I remember that conversation vividly. "Mang MK.4M tank? Are you also into model making?" "A hobbyist." Daniel didn't exude the typical know-it-all attitude some men do, either questioning my skills or lecturing me. As enthusiasts, he simply showcased his own works and collections. He had many rare car models and Gundam figures. There were unfinished models on the workbench next to the cabinet. I took a closer look, and it was a limited edition military model. Can I visit your place to see them?" "Of course, and I also want to see your models, but that'll have to wait until I recover from this cold." A chance encounter laid the foundation for love, with handsome and beautiful, compatible personalities, and common interests. In the back and forth, the sparks of love naturally collided. We would assemble models together, he would grind the parts, and I would change the colors. Model after model, it felt like the crystallization of our love, witnessing our happiness. Occasionally, we would also hold hands and go to model exhibitions, returning home with a full load. Once, Kitty chewed up the model I had just assembled. I was so angry that I wanted to shave all of Kitty's fur off. Though Daniel had also put a lot of effort into that model, he remained patient and comforted me. "It's a limited edition Kitty model, there's only one." Seeing me calm down, he silently repaired the model, giving it his best and putting his heart into it. Afraid that Kitty wouldn't learn from her mistake, Daniel took matters into his own hands and brought all his models to my house, while Kitty and I moved to his place. With the passage of time, our relationship grew deeper. Every corner of the apartment was marked with traces of our life together. Despite Daniel's hidden feelings for David and their shared empathy, I never doubted the love he showed me. David looked away, speaking cynically. Cunning Daniel, he just wants a free labor force. But it's not free. Daniel willingly gave me all his models, even got them notarized. How could I not know about that? My unwavering gaze pierced David. After a moment of silence, his face became serious. "So, when did you start liking Daniel? Was it love at first sight?" David forced a smile with a hint of bitterness. "In your interactions with him afterward, didn't you find him to be different from that first impression?" Indeed, he was different. At first, I thought Daniel was carefree and impulsive, but later I discovered he was actually calm and cautious. I didn't pay much attention to this aspect. I once thought a certain friend of mine was a cold beauty, only to find out she was just an ordinary girl. I joked about this with Daniel. He smiled faintly and explained that having a cold makes people act foolish. David heard this explanation, his tone calm but filled with profound sadness. What he dared to say was that the one you fell in love with at first sight that day was me. These words struck me like a lightning, cutting through layers of doubts, leaving me shocked. His inquiries about Daniel and my first meeting were not akin to a third party asking about the mistress, but rather the rightful owner seeking a confirmation of the theft. I didn't even need to ask for verification. Kitty's closeness to David was the most compelling evidence. Looking back at David, his moist eyes filled with resentment and sorrow, brought back the memories of that cold winter day. In that warm room, I felt as if I were in an icy cave. The first time we met, I told my brother that if that girl ever reached out to him, he must tell me, but he didn't. After work was over, when I wanted to come see you again, he told me you were already in a relationship and getting ready to move. I believed him because he was my brother. If I didn't have this feeling that something was off, he would have continued to deceive me. David lamented the love that ended before it even began, and the betrayal and deceit by his own brother. Tears filled David's eyes as he struggled to speak. I couldn't help but feel sorry for him, just like the first time we met. Kitty clumsily climbed onto his arm, trying to lick away his tears. His emotions seemed to overwhelm his rationality as he raised his hand to grasp Kitty to wipe his tears away. Feeling sorry for him, I handed him a tissue. David took the tissue, and as the memories flooded back, tears welled up in his eyes and fell more and faster. "You fell in love at first sight, you should have loved me instead," he muttered. Would there be a love based on familiarity with Daniel if not for the love at first sight with David? I dare not think about it. Everything is a mess. My love at first sight for David is real, and my growing affection for Daniel is also genuine. The melodramatic plot twist of loving the wrong person is happening to me. This world is truly a big theater troupe. Daniel took credit for David's work and kept it from me, so I found out the truth and knew Daniel was wrong, but I didn't blame him. Towards David, I no longer resisted, and there was even a hint of guilt. Feeling lost, I awkwardly apologized to David. "I'm sorry." From the standpoint of societal morality, as I was already in a relationship with Daniel, I could only apologize to David. But he immediately interrupted my apology, not giving me a chance to refuse. "It's not your fault, I don't blame you. You haven't spent time with me, how can you differentiate between me and Daniel after just one meeting? It's Daniel who deceived me, but why am I the one getting hurt when it's clearly not my fault? I deserve to be the one abandoned, right?" "No." In the silence, David suddenly looked pained, furrowing his brows and tightly clutching his chest. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" I asked with concern. I approached David with worry, concerned about his physical condition and simultaneously anxious about Daniel, with whom he shares a connection. Was David feeling heartache due to sadness, right in front of me? Or was Daniel, far away, experiencing palpitations due to exhaustion, feeling my presence closing? David's brows relaxed, his eyelashes fluttered, and he opened his eyes, a hint of cunning in them. He took my wrist and pulled me into his arms, gently smelling my hair. And asked in a muffled voice, "When I felt pain just now, were you worried about me or my brother? Mocking me?" I struggled to break free, grumbling impatiently, "I'm not worried about either." The more I struggled, the tighter his embrace became, like intertwined vines that were difficult to separate. "I don't believe you. You are clearly in a dilemma, which shows that your heart is not completely filled with Daniel, but also with me. This is my bargaining chip in competing with him." "You're only dating, not married," he said in a cocky tone. I was sure that even if I were already married to Daniel, he would still dare to probe. As his whispers reached my ear, like a demon's invitation, he suggested, "He is dishonest in his emotions, not sincere, so we are not loyal to him, this is fair. After distinguishing between me and Daniel, you can be certain of who you prefer, right? Try it with me, okay?" As I furrowed my brow, trying to understand his words, David held my head and gently tilted it for me to nod in agreement. Shamelessly audacious. Anticipating my reaction, he silenced me with a kiss. My rationality crumbled under the assault of his lips and tongue. Confident in his charm, he gazed into my dazed eyes and whispered, "Don't be afraid, it's only for a few days. My brother is still on a business trip, he won't find out." Tears soaked the corners of his eyes, the blush hadn't faded, adding a touch of charm to his exquisite face, captivating those who gazed upon him. Daniel and David looked identical, but their characters were completely different. One reserved, the other flamboyant. In my relationship with Daniel, it was like I was causing a scene while he just laughed it off. He tolerated my temper, always calmly ending every one of my tantrums. No matter how outrageous I got, he never got upset, just blushed and indulged my teasing. David, on the other hand, was a troublemaker, much like me. If I went crazy, he went crazier. If I caused a scene, he caused a bigger one. It was easy to tease him, but he often turned the tables on me, saying all sorts of nonsense, without shame or embarrassment. He was mischievous and loved to stir things up. For example, during a video call with Daniel, David outside the camera frame was restless, always trying to compete for my attention with the Daniel on the screen. Feeling unwell? When Daniel asked, David slightly restrained himself, casually pushing Kitty into the frame. He made mischief, then let me blame Kitty for it. "See, Kitty hasn't been behaving lately." Daniel seemed to be looking at me, but also at Kitty, with a meaningful tone. "Is that so? Misbehaving children need some discipline." He considerately ended the call and advised me to rest early. After hanging up, I confronted David, who first pretended to be pitiful and apologized sincerely, letting me scold him. But when I calmed down a bit, he cheekily came close, acting silly and pretending to make amends. David effortlessly pulled me into his embrace, his gaze half serious, half playful. "My brother thinks you're unwell, so as compensation, I'll give my sister-in-law a checkup." My cheeks flushed, and I pushed his shoulder forcefully, but he didn't budge. "Stay away from me, and I'll be fine. Got it?" But before Emma could finish her sentence, afraid he might say something improper, I covered his mouth with my hand. David smiled mischievously and gently kissed the palm of my hand. Despite the silence, his hands didn't stop moving. "David, are you ever going to stop?" Breaking free from my grip, David was about to reply when the sound of the door lock verification echoed. In an instant, my heart raced, and my body stiffened. I awkwardly turned my head to see Daniel dragging a suitcase, standing at the doorway. Daniel looked tired, with faint dark circles under his handsome eyes. Unlike a hysterical outburst, he remained composed and calm, gazing fixedly at me and David, his expression blank and inscrutable. David's momentary embarrassment gave way to careful attention as he tidied up my slightly disheveled clothes, stood up slowly, and provocatively smiled at Daniel. "Brother, you're back so early?" Daniel lowered his eyes, calmly entered the room, ignored David, and opened the suitcase. Inside were a few pieces of clothing, with the rest filled with local specialties and a limited edition car model. I remembered asking Daniel before his business trip why he needed such a large suitcase for just a few clothes. Now I understood, he was bringing gifts for me. He took out each item from the suitcase. "These are sweet and spicy, you'll love them. These plums are delicious but cooling, so don't eat too many. This car model is from the exhibit. I remember you were missing this 1 hour 64-minute series, and it took me ages to get it." Daniel's lips curved into a faint smile. "Daniel," he raised his head and asked cautiously, "What's wrong, Emma? Do you not like these gifts?" I glanced at David sideways, then looked back at Daniel, with 1,000 words stuck in my throat, unsure where to begin. "After being apart for so long, don't you miss me?" Daniel stood up and opened his arms towards me. "I'm so tired, can you hug me for a while?" I hesitantly took the first step towards him, and he walked towards me with satisfaction, gently embracing me. Surrounded by the familiar scent of soap, my nose tingled slightly. He held me tightly, silently rubbing my head. As I lifted my head from his embrace and looked into his eyes, I saw him staring at David, his gaze filled with complexity. It was a mix of anger and mourning towards the intruder, as well as confidence and composure from the protector. Sensing my gaze, he lowered his eyes to meet mine. "We can discuss our situation later. For now, we need to get rid of this third party that's ruining our relationship." Every word carried a hint of anger. David exploded like a firework. "Only the unloved become the third wheel. What are you trying to prove here, Daniel? If Emma doesn't like me, would I have a chance to be the third wheel? If you think it's wrong for me to be the third wheel, then break up with Emma and give her to me, so I don't have to be the third wheel. Since Emma likes me, you are the third wheel. Isn't that funny? We love each other. What's your problem?" An invisible tension filled the room. Both sides were on edge, and my gaze wandered back and forth between them, feeling lost and confused. "Emma is still young, she's bound to make mistakes in love, but she loves me the most." Daniel's eyes were stern, his voice serious. "If you truly care about her, you should leave on your own accord, instead of making her feel conflicted." David sneered, crossing his arms mockingly. "Are you, this immoral person, trying to morally blackmail me? It was you who stole Emma from me. If you still have a conscience, you should apologize to me and give Emma back to me. I once said, I would give you anything, even the stars in the sky, but not Emma." Every word they exchanged was like a piercing arrow, hitting each other at their weakest spots, with no regard for each other's feelings. Once as close as brothers, now jealous and fighting over me, they were on the brink of breaking their bond because of me. Afraid of getting pulled deeper into their conflicts, I decided to bury my head in the sand. "I'm tired, I'm going to bed first." As I closed the bedroom door, I left myself stuck in between them. Under the covers, perhaps due to lack of oxygen, or just exhaustion of the heart, I soon fell into a deep sleep. Even in my dreams, I couldn't rest peacefully, feeling like my body was being fought over, torn apart by two people. My soul felt like it was being torn back and forth, almost shattering in the air. I was awakened by the sound of Kitty scratching at the door. Taking a deep breath, I quietly got out of bed, cracked open the bedroom door. And Kitty immediately slipped in, timidly snuggling up next to my feet. Through the crack in the door, I saw David and Daniel both curled up on the floor, holding their stomachs and wincing in pain. They both had bruises on their faces. I didn't know who started the fight, but because of their shared feelings, they were both feeling miserable. The conflict had escalated to the point of physical violence. Despite feeling the same pain, they were both determined to fight each other. I picked up Kitty, opened the door, and slowly walked out of the room. They turned to look at me with hopeful eyes, seemingly waiting for my comfort and pity. But I knew that if I approached one of them first, the other might be driven to madness with jealousy. In that case, I would rather not choose either of them. I rummaged through the cabinet and placed the medicine box on the coffee table. I wanted to be alone at home, so I told them not to come bother me. The two identical faces displayed the same expression of pain. The drooping eyes and furrowed brows were indistinguishable. I made sure to tend to their wounds before resolutely leaving them behind amidst their intense gazes. Returning to my own home, my heart finally settled. Kitty crawled back to her familiar spot, contentedly falling asleep. The figurines in the cabinet remained silent. Unable to sleep, my mind filled with thoughts I couldn't share with anyone. I opened my phone and blocked all messaging apps, then anonymously asked on a forum, both twin brothers like me, what should I do? Having no one to confide in, I concealed our identities and shared our complex story with strangers online. As I stayed at home these past few days, people started responding one after another. I suggest the three of you give it a shot, it seems fitting. Having two identical boyfriends, why settle for both? Since you've experienced both, dump them and find a new man. This real-life version of love triangle literature is interesting. Count me as a shipper. Having two partners at the same time isn't illegal. Keep one in the left chamber of your heart and one in the right. Keep them both. Everyone's time is precious. Don't send such a long message without paragraphs. Regardless of gender, having multiple partners is despicable and trashy. Your behavior is no different than those rotten cucumber male leads. These two guys are also despicable and not clear-headed. Thanks to the previous answers, I now realize that in the eyes of those rotten cucumber male leads, it's thrilling to see two people vying for their attention. Are they fighting over you as if you were an object or resource? Apparently, they haven't considered your feelings. If they put themselves in your shoes, they should learn to coexist peacefully and take care of you together. In any case, I'll be waiting for the follow-up here. The level of tolerance in this society still surprises me. Can three people coexist peacefully? This is not something I can control alone. Daniel and David, blood brothers, had a fierce fight. Whether they could reconcile remains uncertain, especially with me added into the mix. Will there be any peace in daily life then? Stop. After experiencing a twisted love affair, it is difficult to return to normal emotions, almost like sinking deeper when struggling in a swamp. My moral bottom line seems to be getting lower, as I am actually considering the idea of living with two other people. A triangle has stability, but a love triangle does not. Moreover, if I really choose a love triangle, I won't be able to bear the gossip of society. It's unnecessary to create unnecessary trouble for myself over emotions. Thinking to this point, my mind clears slightly. It seems that I have been trapped in emotions for too long, forgetting that there should be other melodies in my life. For example, getting involved in stray animal rescue work or visiting exhibitions in other places. Just when I was planning a short escape in the future, I noticed Kitty in the corner and the model in the cabinet. Their shadows are present in my thoughts. Perhaps my lack of love experience is the reason why I can't forget about them. I want to try new things, meet new people, and start a new life. I lock the cabinet, leave Kitty in a reliable pet shop for long-term fostering, and start traveling. In each new place, with a group of strangers, I climb mountains, explore the sea, and feel the vastness of the world. All worries scatter with the wind and fall on the road. In a small town, I meet someone who resembles Daniel and David, like blood brothers from different parents. This person is a local bookstore owner. As I hurriedly sketched in the bookstore, I saw this familiar face, and my heart skipped a beat. Perhaps, I simply like this face. His character is a mix of Daniel and David, neither overly exuberant nor too stable. A common trait between Daniel and David is their reluctance to interact with others. As a businessman, the bookstore owner is as warm and gentle as a spring breeze in his dealings with people. I ordered a cup of coffee from him. The latte art depicted a cute little cat. At just one glimpse, it reminded me of Kitty. Without any special instructions, the coffee was made to my taste with extra milk. I squinted in satisfaction, watching the busy figure of the owner. In a daze, it seemed as if I saw Daniel and then David. After days of constant travel, my eyelids grew heavy, and I felt drowsy. In my dream, like a flat boat, I drifted on the boundless sea. Strangely, the sea waves were scorching, and the steaming heat made breathing difficult. A big wave hit, the boat capsized, and I was pulled into a whirlpool, enveloped by a warm current, dragged into the abyss. When I woke up, I was still at the table in the bookstore. I was dressed neatly, feeling a bit of a headache, but otherwise fine. The bookstore had already closed, and the customers had all left, leaving only a lamp on at the counter. Sorry, I slept for too long. The owner smiled and shook his head. It's okay, you are welcome to come back anytime. Do you need me to take you back to your hotel? No, thank you. He jingled the car keys. It's very late, and the bookstore is a bit isolated. I'll give you a ride on my way. It was the third day the owner gave me a ride, holding my hand and lightly kissing the back of it. I accepted this brief romance during the trip, categorizing it as a fleeting encounter in a mundane small town. On the fourth day, he still held my hand and lightly kissed the back of it. You already confessed your feelings yesterday, Mr. White. He smiled gently. That was different. I was puzzled for a moment, wondering how it was different. As we parted ways, I leaned in and kissed him. He was slightly surprised, but then took the lead, deepening the kiss. I glimpsed the rush of emotions beneath his gentle demeanor. In that moment, when he held the back of my head, I thought of David. This kiss, without any structure, purely skilled, was his unique style. I reached inside his coat, but I didn't feel any scars. It wasn't him. Surprisingly, I felt a tinge of disappointment. Not satisfied with my distraction, Mr. White playfully nibbled at my lip. However, he really seemed like him. Perhaps it was fate giving me a fresh start. Another day of kisses, and it was completely different. It was careful, teasing, deliberately matching my pace. Holding my hand tightly, gradually progressing, it was the little actions when Daniel kissed me. Something was wrong. After observing a few times, I noticed that Mr. White's emotions and personality were stable every day, except during the kisses, one day dominating, the next gentle. Once again, when I fell asleep in the bookstore, I struggled to open my eyes just a sliver. My vision was blurry, but I could feel myself lying in bed, with two people beside me. On the left was a handsome face, and on the right was an identical handsome face. Even in my foggy state of mind, I could understand what was happening. Daniel and David were playing the same person. To avoid any flaws, David even underwent scar removal surgery. Mr. White, they both imitate each other's personalities based on their own characters. They share a connection, are familiar with each other's emotional state, characteristics, and habits, but they do not know the details of each other's kissing styles. Well, not knowing is actually normal, truly knowing is what's unusual. In the midst of the confusion of emotions and passion, their true characters are most easily revealed through their kisses. In their conversation, I gradually unravel the truth behind this romantic encounter. What if Emma finds out our true identities? We have been pretending to be the same person all along. Whoever she ultimately guesses the name of wins, while the other exits, to avoid making Emma unhappy. But what if she never finds out? Then we will continue taking turns pretending to be Mr. White, so as not to put Emma in a difficult position. Can't the three of us live together? If Emma leaves without saying a word, it means she would rather not choose anyone at all and not get involved in this illicit love affair. We must not be too selfish. Hopefully, Emma won't find out, so neither of us needs to exit, and Emma won't become a subject of gossip. We can't offer Emma a healthy love, so let's just play at having a healthy love. Feeling as if I'm back at the table in the bookstore on the ground floor, I prop my chin in my hand and slowly open my eyes. Do these two brothers have any morals? They are deceiving and acting, even playing at hypnotizing. Do these two brothers lack morals? They are still considering things from my perspective. They have some morals, but not much. I take a moment to update the question. They are now pretending to be the same person and dating me, thinking I don't know. As for what others comment on or respond, I no longer concern myself with it. Observations made during the journey have broadened my thoughts, and I am no longer as troubled as before. Things that the parties involved don't mind, others can't say anything about. In life, there aren't that many spectators. If the new life cannot avoid involving these two people, then so be it. Now I am even more curious. If I continue to pretend not to know and force a proposal, how will these two brothers react? Will they have to date for a lifetime? That's not entirely impossible. The truth will eventually come to light. Being too clever can lead to accidents. I am eagerly looking forward to the day they are exposed. Come on, Emma, I'll walk you back to the hotel. Following behind him, I smile mischievously. Today, is it Daniel or David? The answer is clear when we part with a kiss.